Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jim Warren with TXAPA. Welcome to our Optimized series. It's Tuesday, the 7th, 8th? I don't know. I can't remember. Here we go. Glad to have everybody here today. This is our Optimizing Plant Production program. Thank you for joining us. This program is being recorded. And since you registered by email, you will be getting an email link later on, probably tomorrow, that will have the program on it so you can rewatch it again or share it with anybody that you want to. And we encourage you to go ahead and share this information. We will be using the GoToWebinar webcam feature only, and I'll show you how to maximize your screen if you haven't done that already. And we want your questions at any time, so let's go ahead and get started with that. So if your screen looks like this and you just see a little blank line in there, go ahead and click on that box or that little double arrow in the bottom right-hand corner, and that should take you a full-size screen, or you can drag and resize it yourself so you can see everybody and everything we'll be covering today. Uh, Questions at any time, there's a little box at the bottom right-hand side. You type your question in there, and we want your questions all day long. So, hey, let's see if they're working for you. Go ahead and tell me what city you're from. Go ahead and type in your city, and just go ahead and click send, and let's see, make sure it works. And we'll get, I'll read them out as we get going, and make sure everybody's right. I've got Granbury, Texas already. Awesome. Thank you, David. And Dallas, Longview, Tyler, Bernie. Good job, guys. I'm glad to have you all here. So El Paso, um, all the way out there, almost in another El Paso. All right, excellent. Thank you, guys. Alfonso, thank you. McAllen, thank you, Alan. We've got a good group, and hopefully audio is coming through well for you guys. If it's not, tell me to turn the audio up, and I can do that. We're running a bunch of different systems here, and we'll get it done. So, hey, today's lineup, I'll do the safety share as we typically do. San Antonio, thanks, Billy. This is our optimization series. This got started about a month ago when we were doing these one-on-one meetings with our members, and we've got so many specification changes this year. We decided to go ahead and try to sit down. Well, we're virtually sitting down, Chuck Fuller and I. We were up to 10 or 11 now, I guess, Chuck, or 12 that we've done. And if you haven't had that done yet, give us a call and we'll get it set up for you. We're sitting down with you guys and walking you through what all the specification changes are, things that you need to be aware of that can bite you. And so we want to make sure you got that. And we're going to give you a really cool resource, a really neat interlinked a bookmarked PDF that's just chock full of stuff. So if you haven't done that, let us know. Lufkin, thank you. Josh. So in the midst of all that, we decided to go ahead and develop a couple little programs, one on mix design, one on plants, and one on roadway operations, and give those more to the level 2 guys, the 1As, the 1Bs, et cetera. So we should maybe have some 1As on here today. We had some level 2s on last week. Hopefully we got some QC managers on today, and hopefully get some management on today as well. So this stuff is for you. Hopefully you're going to walk away with a couple nuggets that are going to help you run your plants better and get better bonuses. So today is on plant production. Next Tuesday at 3 o'clock is on roadway operations. There's a website there, texasasphalt.org. If you click on education and you click on videos, you can see the last video we did, and it's up there all posted, and all our future ones will be posted up there as well. So very good. And then we're going to jump into our actual topic today is optimizing plant production. Got some great guys on. TJ Young with Tasco, known TJ or Terry for 30, 35 years now, I think, forever. And also Chuck Fuller, another great plant guy. So we're going to talk about plants this afternoon and have a good afternoon. So before we get started, we want to talk about our safety share today, and it'll be heat exhaustion and heat stroke. It's hot out there. It's just hot. So even with the hurricane that came through, it cooled things off, but we're back at it today in the midst of it. So symptoms of heat exhaustion. We're going to talk about heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Symptoms of heat exhaustion include headache, excessive sweating, fatigue, dizziness and fainting, nausea and vomiting, weak pulse, pale face, muscle cramps, etc. When you start feeling these or you start seeing somebody who has these, time to act is right now. Do not wait. Because if you wait, we can start to move into what is called heat stroke. And heat stroke really means you're affecting your body, and you can have a really bad afternoon if you don't resolve it. So you got behavioral changes, rapid breathing. Your skin may actually dry. You may stop sweating in some cases. You may have a seizure, may start nauseating and vomiting, muscle cramps and weakness. If this is the case, man, you got to jump all over it. You want to move the person to the shade. You want to call 911. You want to remove any excess clothing they've got, and you want to cool them down as quickly as you can. Put water on their neck, wrists, groin area where you've got all the major veins and arteries that are running through, and you want to cool that person down as quickly as possible. And then you want to get them to emergency so they can rehydrate them and dilute them. So seek medical attention. This is not something you say, hey, just walk it off and go home. Because Chuck Fuller, he's had a situation with that. Chuck, you want to share?
Yeah. So I had a heat event. I had heat exhaustion, and it turned into a heat stroke, and that means my kidneys started shutting down. Potassium level starts raising. I was rushed to the hospital emergency room, and they gave me a couple of 2 or 3 of those big liter bags full of saline, thinking that I was dehydrated, but it wasn't for dehydration. It was to lower the potassium level. My potassium level had gotten so high that's what creates the stroke, is the potassium in your body creates the stroke. The main thing here is, and we talk about this, is that when somebody is having a heat event, don't just go put them in an air-conditioned truck or underneath a tree and leave them. You really need to stay with them because it can change within minutes. It can go from a heat exhaustion or a heat event to a heat stroke, but just in a few minutes. So you need to stay with them. And then also new hires. Please look after your new hires, guys. I mean, it's hot out there in Texas. We've had 25 days over 100 here in Austin. And you get a new hire that's been working, maybe at the grocery store or something, and now you put them out there in 105-degree temperature and the heat index is 110, 115. They're going to have trouble with heat until they get acclimated. So watch your new hires. And if somebody does have an event, please stay with them. Just don't let them sit in a truck or sit underneath a tree. So that's my suggestion to you. And then again, like Jim said, if in all doubt, call 911. Do not hesitate, because it can get real serious real quick, and it can lead to fatality. So
yeah, thank you, Chuck. Thank you, buddy. All right, so we're ready to get started here. I hope you're as excited about it today as I am, and we got a lot of new people on today, which is great. I appreciate you guys coming on, and let's go ahead and get started. So let me introduce. I got TJ Young, and TJ and Chuck. Why don't you guys just talk a little bit about your background just for a minute, because there may be some people on here that do not know you. And we just want to get them to get a feel for you, and then we'll go ahead and get started in the program. So let's go ahead. TJ, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I've been in the business since 1979. I think we either are born into it, I think Chuck was, or you get into it by accident, and that's what happened to me. I started working for a plant manufacturer. So the short version is I've got about 20 years of experience building plants. And then the last 20 years, I've been a consultant to the industry. So I've written a lot of stuff for NAPA, a lot of the state qualification programs. I authored those, and I've done some stuff for FHWA. I've been a speaker for a number of years, set up our training program at Standard Havens back in the old days. And somewhere along the line, I'm sort of an asphalt plant geek. And somewhere along the line, you move from building plants to learning how to run them properly. And right now, I'm doing both my consulting work, and I'm also managing an operation in Jacksonville, Florida, where we have 3 plants. And we have an opportunity for a lot of bonus down here in Florida. Florida's the 3rd largest state, so we're behind you guys. And we're trying close to catching up with you, which will never happen. But so I've got some experience, both longevity and done a lot of consulting work. And that's kind of what I'm bringing here to this conversation is I started noticing a number of years ago, there was a pattern of people that were consistently getting bonus with the people that I was working with across the United States. We'll talk more about that later, but so I've lived it, and that's kind of my 20-second background, 20-minute background.
All right.
Go.
How about you, Chuck?
Yeah, so I've been in the business, like TJ said. I was actually born into the business. My brother David and I had worked together for forever. We worked at Austin Bridge and Road for 20 years. We worked with a bunch of good guys at Ramey Paving. I can't stress enough that we never would have been able to make Ramey Paving what it was without the Jimmy Whiteds and the Lance Townsends and the Alan Knoxes and the David Fullers. I mean, we just had a great group of guys, and we did really well with that. And I'm more of a hands-on. I'm more of, out in the field, and I take constructive criticism really well. Again, I've been married for 40 years, so I take constructive well. But yeah, so I've just been in it my whole life. I love asphalt. I live and breathe it. It's part of my life, and it will continue to be part of my life. And I'm glad to be here to be able to with TJ to discuss the proper optimizations of your asphalt plants. Bonuses are a big deal, guys, and TJ is going to walk through some of these items, and I'm going to concur with him that we really need to pay more attention to what we're doing to enhance or increase our bonus percentages, and we can do it. We can do it with some of the tools TJ's fixing to talk about.
All right, good job. So, all right, let's just get into this. We're already in it, and I know we're gonna run out of time today. So let's start at the beginning, guys. Let's start at the stockpiles. Okay, so you guys, let's just take it off, and you guys go. Let's start. What do we got to know about stockpiles to optimize our rates? Go.
Well, the first thing is, and this is all about managing variability. Rocks change, gradations move. We design our mix, we might produce it 6 months later, and rocks gradations are naturally going to move. In fact, everything about this talk is really about managing variability. And what do people do to get control of that variability? So what I've noticed about people that contractors, your peers, no matter what state you're in, that consistently knock it out of the park and get bonus, they're on top of what's in that stockpile. They map that stockpile. They know that aggregate as it's coming in. They're testing it as it's coming in. And they're verifying that it's not moving, or if it does move, and Chuck, you might want to give an example from the real world with you. But when you do notice it start changing, if you've got control charts and you notice that it starts moving, then you can proactively make the mix change. And this is what people do that get bonus. Chuck, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I do, if I drive into an asphalt plant, first thing I do is just look to see that all the stockpiles are the same size. In other words, your loader operator is working the stockpiles correctly. And after I see that, I make sure that there's no cross-contamination of the stockpiles, that we have enough room in between the stockpiles that we could drive the loader through, and there's no cross-contamination. I look at that real close, but I can tell within the first 10 minutes behind the asphalt plant on whether or not we're going to have issues, with the asphalt plant, just by watching the loader operator loading from the front face, bringing in material from the back, and TJ will talk about that. But control charts, guys, when he talks about managing variabilities, Jimmy Whited taught me, from day one, that if we don't have control charts and know what we have behind the asphalt plant, we're not going to be successful. And we happened to be in a quarry that was, the variability of the material out of that quarry was just huge. So every day, run moistures. They were running gradations every other day, running specific gravities, running decants. And these control charts, you can see when you put them in a graph, you can start seeing the changes that they happen. And then Jimmy with his team would be able to make a JMF change before we had a failing sample. Again, we were proactive. And I can't stress enough, anybody who has an asphalt plant, who's dealing with rocks, like TJ said, controlling variability, you need to have control charts, guys. You need to know where that rock's at.
Yeah, it's super important. And again, these are the guys that really, make the bonus. They're doing that. And here we test our rock every 1,000-ton minimum. A lot of times we'll run tests every 500, 600, 700 tons. and we know what's going on. A lot of people I've consulted with, we do, like Chuck said, you do the front side of the pile, the back side of the pile. You want to use rock that you know is good. People that get into trouble are using fresh rock right out of the quarry. Quarry might have had a problem last night, might have changed the screens. Wash plant might have gone down, dust went up in the wash screenings. And if they're working first in, first out, if they put it in the front of the face, feed it in the plant, they're just setting themselves up for a problem. So I always look at stockpiles, like Chuck said, and I look at it to try to manage that variability. And I say to myself, am I going to recommend a front back thing here? Am I going to look at a left right thing? And a lot of times if you have a bunker, you can just put in the left side of the bunker while you're taking out of the right. You know what you've got. Test your left. If it doesn't change, you know you can move back over there. If you have a grade change, you know what you've got. We've got a lot of material to cover in 60 minutes, so I think we ought to move on. The next thing, the view from 30,000 feet, when I'm working with people, is looking at those two things. The plant is only a blending machine. The plant is only a blending machine.
That's a good
So
point.
we're blending aggregate, we're drying it, we're heating it, we're putting it in a truck without segregating it and getting that to the job site. So if the mix moves, it's pretty simple. Did my rock move or did my plant move? Hey, plants are machines. And guess what happens? You can accept it or not, but the gradation, the calibrations do go off on plants. This is a machine. And so your belt scale can have a problem. Your rock can change. A classic case is a guy pulling a board or a boulder out of a feed bin, or somebody got a chunk of concrete in the sand bin because they were also pushing concrete up in the back of the yard, whatever. And the guys pull the gate open to get the concrete out, to get running. And then they stand there and look at each other and go, was that in pin hole number 3 or number 4?
Yeah.
I think it was 4, Jimmy. And they put it in 4, and it should have been in 3.
Oh,
This
my.
is a real common problem that happens all the time across the United States. The point about this is that when Jim talked to me about this, it's like, what do people do that really make bonus? They are totally on top of their calibrations. They know their plant is calibrated. And so when they're on hold at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the rest of their life, 2 more loads and hold, 2 more loads and hold, you have an opportunity to run. If you have a truck in the yard, you can run a feeder check, you can run a bell scale check. And when the mix moves, the guys will look you dead in the eye and go, I know it's not my plant. So it's a blending machine. So did the ingredients move, or did the plant have a problem? And that's kind of the two overarching key concepts there. The key word Chuck already mentioned, proactive. The people who make bonus. And I created a lot of trouble years ago when I started talking about this world of asphalt. I discovered the people that make bonus check their plant calibrations every 2 to 4 weeks as I went around the country auditing plants for people.
2 to 4
and I'm
weeks.
like, holy crap. So when you ask the question, I'll tell you what the answer is 90% of the time. You go to a plant and say, when was the last time you calibrate? And they go, well, we calibrate once a year, whether we need to or not, or if we have a plant problem, right?
Right.
But the people that are making consistent bonus are, well, we check that every once in a while. You can check something in 30, 40 minutes. You just kind of knock one thing off the list, knock another one off the list, knock another one off the list. The other thing you watch is your target to actuals. If your target to actual is off in your plant computer, not a good thing. It's going to be one or two things. Either your moistures have moved and you haven't put the right moistures in the plant, or one of your bins went out of calibration. Motor's dragging, tack is dragging, spring broke on the tack, something like that goes on. These are very common problems. So watching your target to actual is a hint, and proactively checking what's in your piles and checking what's in your plant.
Yeah, absolutely. Proactive is the way to go. Don't wait until you start having, where you're at 1-0s or you're paying penalties or you're in a remove and replace. and then you become chasing the answer instead of being proactive about your calibrations and your materials going in. You know, with SMAs and super paved mixes, we know that we're going to have more than a 3 or 4 bin mix. So calibrate your bins to the rocks that are going through there. Like TJ said, know your settings for those rocks that are going through those bins, and know what they are, and then proactively calibrate them and have that knowledge of them. And again, control charts are going to tell you, like he said, is your targets. Those control charts will help you to identify that.
Absolutely. Hey, just a reminder to everybody out there. We want your questions. So go ahead. I'm sure you probably got one right now. Go ahead and type it in and send it to me, and then we'll read it off, and we'll get these guys to answer it as we go. And so anytime you got a question, go ahead and just put it in there and let us have it. And because we want to know, we want to interact with you as much as we can, given the technology that we have got to work with. So, all right, back to you guys. So we're looking at the aggregate, or know what's coming in and out. We're calibrating our plant. Is there more stuff on calibration? What else we got to do?
I'm going to back you up, Jim.
All right.
You said you used all the wrong words.
All
We
right.
already know what's in our stockpile.
Okay.
We already know our plant's calibrated.
My bad.
You know, yeah. The next thing is producing steady runs. Okay, so this is the plant geek in me talking now. From building plants, people don't really. I mean, plant guys know this. QC people know this. I'll explain to you why this happens.
Okay.
It takes time for the material to move through the plant. So not all rocks go through the dryer at the same speed, okay? And when you have sand, varying moistures will affect the fines carryout. So rock goes through the plant quickly, sand goes through later, and if you change the production rate up and down and change your mixes back and forth rapidly, you get what I call a magic mix. So they're going to have that crossover mix. Like a lot of times sales say, well, we don't know what happened to that sample. Well, you go talk to plant guys and they go, well, we were in the middle of doing a switchover. Okay. So at the plant level and at the planning level, so this is where the office gets into play now. Because a lot of times the plant guys are just doing what they're told. If we've overbooked the plant, or if the plant guys jackrabbit the production rate up and down, and I'm talking about 2 things at once here, so let's just deal with one at a time. When you change your production rate, okay, it takes time for the baghouse dust to catch up. Okay, so if you go from 300 ton an hour to 350 ton an hour, your dust is going to still be coming back at 300 ton an hour for a little bit of time. It depends on the configuration of the plant, how big the baghouse is, how far it is away from the dryer, and several other variables.
Are we talking
But
minutes?
you know you're going to
talking
be
minutes
a
at
little
this point?
short.
Are we
Jim,
talking?
did you ask me a question?
Yeah. Are we talking just a couple minutes or 5 minutes, or I guess depends on the plant?
So, okay, so why don't you let everybody vote? Okay, so everybody go to your screen and vote and send it to Jim and just guess in 5-minute increments how long this takes. And after you've done your vote, I'll give you the answer. Okay.
Right, so go ahead.
But the point is, this is why you're always taught to ramp your production rate up slowly and ramp it down slowly. So you're allowing the dust, which really affects your voids and affects your field density and affects your 200, which we've learned is a critical sieve, affects your field success. This is why when you go to Aztec school, you go to Gencor school, you go to Standstill school, when you know and you have a good trainer, they're telling you, don't jackrabbit this production rate up and down. Jim,
Go ahead.
give us some of the answers.
I got 10 minutes. I got 20 minutes so far. Still waiting on a few more. Come on, guys. Come on, guys.
10,
weigh
I
in.
can tell you that 10 to 20 is 80% of the time statistic.
Okay, there's a 15. There's a 6.
Yeah, so 15, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. You want to ease into your rate changes. Now, this causes planning. So what happens is, and not to be negative here, but a lot of times the plant guys will only do what the management tells them to do, or the field management tells them to do, or the general superintendent tells them to do. So when they call in there and they say, I want to get those trucks out of the yard, okay, and that guy's got a 400 ton an hour plant and he's clipping along at 275, you don't be surprised if he bangs that thing to 350. if you get a sample in that switchover time frame, you can be short on dust. It's going to affect your voids. It's going to affect your field density. It's going to affect your paving success.
Good info.
The other thing that can happen is if you've overbooked the plant or you're switching mixes too frequently. So guys who make bonus will try to run a silo at a time. And this is the subject of a complete different webinar, which takes us an hour to go through all the variabilities. But the short version is stagger your start times. If everybody starts at 7 o'clock and everybody's paving at 300 ton an hour, and you're running 3 mixes through 3 silos, and the plant runs 300 ton an hour, even if you come in 3 hours early, in 4 hours, you know, at 8 o'clock, you're going to have a problem, because when they all start coming back, then you can only make 1 mix at a time. And so what you don't want to do is make 2 loads for one guy, make 2 loads for another guy, make 2 loads for somebody else, because you're always in the middle of that, in that magic mix mode. You haven't leveled out. We have a rule here in Florida where we do 100 ton minimums. I mean, I just wig out if we don't produce at least 100 tons of mix. We shoot for a silo. And this takes cooperation. So that, and again, that's a whole different discussion, but the more discussion you can have about how these things impact your overall performance, and you can get that culture of cooperation going, then you've got a lot better success at having a consistent mix. If you have a consistent mix, then you can get consistent density and smoothness. But if you don't have a consistent mix, you're just setting the guys up in the field for failure. Chuck, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's all about consistency. And again, not only when you jackrabbit it up and down, you're going to have issues with temperatures, minus 200s, like you said, the baghouse. You're affecting your discharge temperatures. You have an opportunity, if you're going from a wrap mix to a non-wrap mix or a virgin mix, you'll have temperature spikes. And you just got to pay really close attention to it. And I like your thought process and your ideas of running 100-ton minimums. Again, when we had our plant, our first plant, 2 silos, and we had 5 crews, we would run that thing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always be behind. We were always behind, and we were chasing results instead of predicting results. And that's where you really should, really pay attention to staggering of your trucks and staggering of your crews is you have to do it. And you have to have somebody who supports that. Like you said, upper management has to support that. Your scheduler, your guys because you're absolutely right. That plant operator is going to do exactly what you tell him to do.
All right, so let me jump in here then, since both of you guys were in both production and also management. How do you convince management to not run 2 loads at a time? How do you give the plant operator the authority to make the call and say, I'm not going to run 2, I'm going to run 100 ton, or I'm going to run a silo? How do we make that decision and change maybe what we've been doing to something that's going to give us better results? How do we do that?
Can I talk first?
Yeah.
Chuck, is that okay? All right. First of all, if you're not doing this already now, do not expect this change to happen rapidly. People's immediate reaction on any kind of a change of culture is a negative one. I mean, it's a human nature thing. It's not just us. It's not just the industry. It's human nature. The best thing to do is have that kind of discussion in the beginning. And I've found that if you have that discussion and then you predict what some of the problems are, and people won't believe it until they skin their own knees. And when you've had that discussion and then you skin your knees, they start to believe that maybe they did it to themselves, and you start making some progress. And as far as giving the operator the authority, I don't recommend that. I think what you need to do is you need to have a production manager or a superintendent stand in the gap between the plant guy and management and let him have those big shoulders. Elevate that person to that position and say, look, they're they're standing in the gap. Most people will not believe. I lived through this down here in Florida. They didn't believe this until we talked about it a long time, until we had bonus, and then a flyer that is, problem. And the QC manager is like, it was a switch over mix. We overbooked the plan. And now we're trying to do too much. And now they're actually on the team of cooperation helping plan production. And that's it's just expect this to take a little time to make that change. But if you don't ever talk about it, and we're starting it here, it never happens. Chuck?
Same thing here. So during my time at Ramey, of course, I had some great guys. Again, I had guys that really communicated back and forth. I had buy-in from the quarry. I had buy-in from the plant. I had buy-in from QC, and then we had internal trucking. We started our conversation about 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the next day's plan. And so what we do is we'd go through and highlight the jobs that we were going to hit correctly, stagger the trucks right, stagger the material right, make sure that we were good on QC, make sure that we didn't have a rain event, that we were going to have too much moisture, and all that stuff was talked about. We started about 3 o'clock, and then it goes all afternoon long into the evening. And then, of course, in the morning, we try to make that thing come together. But we had buy-in from everybody. And TJ, you're exactly right. We had buy-in from everybody, and I think that's what it takes. And we included everybody in the conversation. Again, QC, our project management, our superintendents, and our trucking guy. We had conversations with them all, and they all had input. So staggering the start times are imperative for these productions and longer runs, to where you can get more consistent mix. And then when we did have a specialty mix, if we had a PFC or an SMA, we did not run anything else other than that mix.
Yeah.
That was the ending goal with us. If we had a specialty mix, we only ran that specialty mix. Therefore, we ran a lot at night. We did a lot of nighttime work. But if we had a specialty mix, we did not run that specialty mix with anything else when we just had the one plant.
So explain why you're just going to run a specialty mix and not run anything else. I know the answer, but let's just go through it. Just make sure we understand what are the things that we have to do differently when we're making an open graded mix or a PFC mix or an SMA that's different than if we're running regular mixes. What does that do to production? What does that do to the drum? What does that do to dust? Let's just have a couple minute discussion on that.
So from my standpoint, what we had was our bands were so close and so narrow on an SMA. In other words, you could be 1/2 of a percentage point off, and you could be in a remove and replace versus a 10% bonus. So we really had to concentrate on our QC end to be able to make sure that we will dial in correctly. We have these continuous long runs. You don't hot stop the plant. You don't start and stop the plant. You don't switch over. You have a continuous run, and everybody's aware of your production rate for that day or for that shift. So if we were going to run 1,500 tons and we were on point for running 1,500 tons, we didn't try to run 1,800 or 1,900. We were on point for the 1,500, and we're going to do that correctly. When you start switching back and forth, or you start doing anything like that, especially with an SMA, you can go from a 10% penalty or 10% bonus to a remove and replace in just a blink of an eye. And so that's what we were trying to prevent. We were trying to prevent the penalties and the remove and replace, and maintain that bonus.
Okay, what do you think, TJ?
I'll give you some more physics here as well. When you work on PFC mixes, and we run a lot of PFC mixes in Florida, these have a very low density. There's a lot of big rocks, and they are taller. Each ton of mix in the drum is taller. And so it's more prone to segregate, because you can exceed the height of your mixing flights very easily. And you'll see it in rollback on the slack conveyor. Plants are really built for dense graded mixes. So when you go to SMA type mixes and you go to PFC type mixes, each ton of mix is taller in the plant. And guys learn. And also when you run a PFC mix, you're laying it usually pretty thin. And so what happens is you end up slowing down, and you're doing two things. You're minimizing the segregation, and you're minimizing the mixing problem that can occur in the plant. We did a study down here and found that one plant had to run in a certain window, and the mix would be variable because of the height in the mixing area on that brand of plant. The other brand of plant was slightly different. So we have a lot of data on that. Again, control charts, right? And we produce like a lot of test batches and sampled load after load after load. And so they're prone to segregate because there's a lot of big rock in them. There's a lot of near-sized rock. And so you want to do a lot of other things right. Load your trucks exactly right. Control your speed of your plant. When you change the speed, remember the big rocks go through quicker than the small rocks do. So that induces some variability. And if you get a sample there, that it could throw your grades off. So running steady is a good way to go. Not raising your production rate up and down, okay? Trying to match your production rate with your paving speed so you don't do a lot of starts and stops for these specialty mixes. And then like Chuck mentioned earlier, and we're seeing more and more of these kind of specialty mixes. So it's very good policy to check your calibrations with the rock you're running. Chuck mentioned that earlier. I like to see the asphalt cements calibrated through the meter on the actual cement that you're going to run at the temperature you're going to run it. And we've talked about these things before in some of the meetings we've had, but you want to verify that your plant is calibrated for that mix, for that binder. Everything is fine. And what we'll do on PFC mixes and SMA type mixes and P401 mixes is we'll do spot checks on the belt scale prior to production. And so we'll run a couple belt scale checks before we go into production. And then the guys are much more confident they're going to have success that night. And it's all about, it's all about confidence. And Chuck mentioned the other thing. We're probably going to run out of time here, but I'm going to segue over to temperature.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is controlling temperature is critical for field success. And the job of the plant is to produce a good mix at a consistent temperature. Your first step for field success is a consistent temperature out of the plant, because if you talk to compaction experts, they'll tell you when your temperature swings 15 degrees in the field, you end up with a different optimum rolling pattern. And we can control a good plant guy and a good loader man, staying at a consistent place in the stockpile, and a good plant guy running at a consistent rate can hold that temperature within 10 degrees. And this is certainly one of the things that I do when I'm scorecarding operators. I look at, when I'm standing in the control house, I'm looking at targeted actual, I'm looking at steady runs, and I'm watching that temperature. Even though they give us plus or minus 25 degrees, if you swing that temperature in the field 25 degrees, you're chasing that field density. So if we're going to have success all the way around, it starts from the plant, loading the trucks right, controlling temperature, having good mix, and then you've got a very good chance of getting field success.
Yeah, let me jump in. Let me jump in there real quick, Chuck, because we've spent a good deal of time on these one-on-ones we're doing with the members, and we're talking about the 3076 and the 3077, the temperature requirements, the maximum temperature requirement, the temperature before the paver, the temperature behind the paver, all those things. And if we can get a better consistency coming in, I think we're probably going to have a much better opportunity of success of coming out behind the paver. What do you think, Chuck?
Oh yeah. So I did not know the temperature that TJ that it just rattled off, about 15 degrees. I mean, I knew it mattered, but I didn't realize that it's about 15 degrees before you start really having to adjust your rolling patterns and be able to start looking at the stuff behind it. So 15 degrees isn't that much. And controlling that temperature at the asphalt plant, that's your first line of success, is going to be at the asphalt plant, controlling that temperature. And I think we probably don't pay enough attention to that. And again, with control charts, if you're looking at your temperature, you're looking at your gradation, and you're looking at your in-place air voids, you know, there's a correlation between all that. And there's no doubt that temperature plays a big part in that, you know. So I'm glad that you brought that up, TJ, about that controlling the temperature at the asphalt plant. Give those guys at least a shot of success out there at the field with consistent temperatures.
Yeah, good deal. And one more thing, TJ. Let me just remind everybody, hey, we're still taking questions. Go ahead and just type them in there. Type them in the box, send them in. Stump these guys. You know, if it's simple, it's complicated. I want your question. I want to make these guys sweat a little bit today. But go ahead and just type it in there. Let me see it, and we'll go ahead and read it out and keep going. So back to you guys. So we were talking about temperature consistency. What else do we have to do?
Loading the trucks properly. You know, I've spent quite a bit of time in Texas, even with half-inch mixes, and have discovered there, have discovered in Missouri, have discovered in Florida, and it's something that's highly controversial. You know, I guess people argue with me about this, but I have proven, even with half-inch mixes that we produce pretty frequently, that if you load in square body trucks, if you load the trucks properly, you can improve your mix consistency and your pay consistency. And that was a big shock to me. You know, that is not what you learn on the street. But when we fly around the country and we meet with different people, mix is made the same all over the United States. What's different is the aggregate. And this is what we see people that are having success. And so what we're bringing up here is we're not preaching, we're sharing what people like you, other producers like you, that, you know, they go play scratch golf every week. And the rest of us are struggling sometimes, you know, playing bogey golf. And it's like, what are you guys doing? And this is what they do. So they load those trucks right. They treat that seriously. They never load below the cone line, ever, ever, ever. You know, there's always up on that cone transition. So you're pushing down, that mass of materials pushing down through that round cylinder at that gate in a consistent manner, and it doesn't rat hole out. They load the trucks properly. They control the temperatures, and guys can do that. They proactively know what's in their stockpile. They know their plant's calibrated. They produce in steady runs. They don't jackrabbit the production rate out, and they just clip coupons.
Yeah. So what happens when at the beginning of the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, the plant operator looks up and there's 25 trucks sitting in the yard ready to be loaded out? And
it's not his fault. It's not his fault. That's somebody else's fault. It's like, you know what? You can only pave one truck at a time. And I tell my guys, just ignore that. Okay. It's like, I'll deal with this. Okay. Just crank this thing up and load 2 for that guy, load 2 for that guy, load 2 for that guy. I'll talk to the truck boss later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in reality, then that operator would just do one drop all at one time into that truck and ship it on, and one drop, ship it on, you know, and then you start having issues. And again, consistency is where it's all about. Instead of chasing the end results, know the answer before the question's asked. Again, I can't stress enough that loading out correctly, when you start seeing issues in the field, especially if you start seeing segregation issues, you know, I can walk it backwards. And typically, if the paver's set up correctly, I walk it back to the plant. My batcher's working correctly at the top. My guy's loading trucks correctly. I can go all the way back to the loader operator and how he's, you know, pulling out of the stockpile. But yeah, all those things, it's all about consistency. And I agree with you 100%. You know, loading multiple drops, and it's definitely going to be a more consistent material out there in the field that you can deal with.
Good to it. Hey, I know we're going to run out of time. I know we were going to do that before we even started. What else have we not covered? Because we can come back and talk about some of these other things in a little bit detail. You know, you talked earlier about switching mixes and when to make a mix change, or have we even talked about when to make a mix change on a particular mix? We've talked about switching mixes, but we haven't talked about changing an existing mix and looking at the data. And I'd also like to throw in, you guys, at some point, let's talk about the communication between the plant and the field and the operator and the QC lab. Let's kind of work that in as well in this discussion as we're going forward. So when do we know when we have to make a change?
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
Well, and I'm going to answer it this way. This is a roundabout way to answer the question. When I go to the field, I ask the plant guys and the QC people and the paving foremen and the schedulers and the management, what are their number one complaints? And I find that very interesting. And the number one complaint by plant operators to QC managers is making mix changes too quickly, right? It's a good policy, like Chuck is talking about control charts. When you have 2 or 3 samples moving in the same direction, then you go, okay, now we can think about making a change. And that's a steady hand at the wheel is in my opinion, and what I see in the field, and guys that have success, they won't jackrabbit that plant with just one test result. So if the plant guys switch mixes too fast, you can see the scenario that you get yourself caught in, because then you get scared because you had a bag sample, so you want to make a change. But the whole problem was that it shouldn't have switched mixes that much. The rocks are okay, the plant is okay, and now you're chasing your tail. So and we've all seen it. We've all seen where we've had bonus, 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 and then a flyer. And I'm telling you, that's a very interesting conversation. So when you can sit around the table and you can say, wait a minute, what happened here? You know, we had very consistent success. Where'd this come from? And you start digging Columbo fashion into doing some diagnostic. You do your Sherlock Holmes thing and you find out, oh, we overbooked the plant, we switched mixes too much. That was the last of the silo. We shouldn't have sampled that load. Then you start getting that confidence going. So making steady changes using control charts. And then what I like to see is real communication. I like the plant guys to be in there. And I like to see, like, one of the things that I'm very fond of is everybody's got iPhones. You take your voids, your AC and stuff, and when you get your test results right away, click a picture and have a text string. When the field densities start coming in, text everybody. Plant guys can see it. They see the gradations. They see the voids. The field densities coming in. Your lab compacted densities are coming in. Your gradations come through. Now everybody starts working on the same team. And you get this culture of cooperation going. Very powerful.
Good. Hey, I got a question came in here. How much mix should you waste, or how much mix is typically wasted when switching mixes? Thanks, Robbie.
Well, there's general on the street, and this will be a good thing for you guys to vote on the screens. If you're not sending questions in for Jim, vote this. What I've seen in the field asking this question around the United States is most people feel there's 1 or 2 loads that are kind of iffy. Okay. And then the next question is, well, how are you handling that? What a lot of people do, which is not generally discussed in public very often, is they'll have a spare silo and they'll put their switchover mix in that silo. So they'll do 1 or 2 loads, they'll flip the batch, or they'll go over there. And if they have an opportunity to sell that mix, like if you're doing a 12.5 for the DOT and it's non-polymer and you've got a private job that's going out, then you might sell that out, or you might mix half of the load with that. Depends on what state you're in, because there's different rules for these kind of things, right? It very much matters across the country, but a lot of guys try to have a cubby hole. When we're producing mixes here and I don't have a cubby hole, I chop gate it into the pit. And I've stood up there many, many times and told guys, I don't care if there's 30 tons in that pit. We have a phrase here, protect the pay. We're protecting the pay, okay? So I'll just, like, particularly with PFC type mixes, where, that kind of buys the plant, and I'm like, if we got to start up, hit the pit. We can recycle that, and it only costs us about $10 a ton. We're not throwing mix away, because we can grind it back up, we can reuse it, we can get the rock back, we can get the AC back. We have an opportunity to get that back. So So those are some of the things that people do. Chuck, what's been your experience on that?
Yeah, so it just boils down to communication. So you're 1A and you're 1B out in the field, you're 1A in the lab. They need to be they need to have constant communication, at least 4 times a day, at least 4 times a day, because it's 4 sublots, right? And they need to communicate that to the plant operator. The plant operator pretty much knows where those 2 or 3 loads, when they do the switchover at in the silo, and he's going to tell you, hey, this is, this is where we're at. And we typically did not try to throw any material away. We tried to utilize material, use the stopwatch, use everything, and we took chances. Those are definitely chances. Never would we have done it on PFC or SMAs or TOM mixes, on our dense graded mixes, switching from a C to a D. We would do that. We would know where that material's at within that area of the silo. Yeah, it's just boils down to communication. And again, I'm only talking about Central Texas. That's the only place that I've had plants at, and I haven't been all over the country like you have, TJ. So, but yeah, I think that communication needs to happen. But in reality, the field could be struggling on their sublots, and the plant saying everything's perfect. I'm getting full bonus, and the field says, well, we're not getting anything because we can't. And there's animosity sometimes, or there's some, banging of the heads. And a lot of the companies that are in Texas, they have a company that actually produces, and then a company that places, even though they're underneath the same company's name, they're different companies and they're judged differently. And so there's a lot that goes into this. The field gets judged differently than the plant. And so those things need to be talked about and communicated about. And TJ, we talked about this just a little bit ago, that of a company that all the bonuses that are made, whether it's production or placement, goes back toward the employees.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I remember I was on the West Coast, and this particular company shares a percentage of their bonus opportunity. So they take their bonus opportunity, they've got a pre-described percentage that they pass out. And the easiest way this is done, that I've seen it done, is your labor money as your pool of your costs, of your labor cost, that's your percentage split. And I've been on crews where they'll go out at night, they have their Take 5 meeting, and they're like, let's go make some money. And they know
There you go.
they're going to go out there and they're all going to get a cut. And it creates this culture of craftsmanship, which is really what we're trying to do. And that culture that Chuck's talking about, Jim's alluding to, has to come from the top in a company. Yeah. And you can read Inc. magazine, you can go to Harvard Business School, whatever. Corporate culture starts at the top. So all the top managers, the QC managers, the production managers, we have a rule here that we never change a mix that the QC manager and the production manager doesn't agree to. And we did that on purpose to try to force cooperation, so that it's everybody, was cooperating. And guys will actually, the carrot is mightier than the stick.
Yeah.
And so when they know, if they all work together and they can score, and that comes from the top, and it's just something to think about. I mean, you guys, not every company wants to do that, and it might not be on your radar screen right now. In fact, some of the things we talked about today might not be on your radar screen right now, but you can start that conversation.
Okay, let me Chuck, let me jump in here. I got another question. I want to make sure we get it resolved before the end of this thing here. Might be a typo in here. I typo all the time when I'm typing in these chat boxes, and you can't fix it. He's talking about the small lot sizes with the new super pave specification. He says we see frequent jumps from 96 to 97.5%. That's the lab molded density with 0 changes. So everything's running, but the lab densities are jumping. This happens in a 1 or 200 ton swing. Any comments on that? That what might be causing that? So I guess everything's running small lot sizes. They're concerned about the pay differences. And if you want to type in a clarification, I would appreciate it. But they're
So
seeing their plant densities, their compaction, their gyratories jumping, and they're not changing the plant. They see that happening all the time within a 100 or 200 ton swing.
So with the new super pay spec, TJ, we narrowed the band to where we have to be below the reference zone, and we narrowed the band on the 16 and the 80 pretty tight. And so what we find out is that they're very sensitive to gradation change in your stockpile. So whoever wrote that question, if you would go back and look, just last Tuesday we did a mixed design webinar like this with Ryan Barbarak and Jimmy Whited, and they talk about these variabilities. And what happens is that if you just have 1 or 2 percentage points off in your man sand or on your F rock, it's going to throw your lab densities up. So be aware that if you're bringing rock in, again, this is where the control charts come in at. The smaller your footprint at your asphalt plant, the more rock you're bringing in, the more you have to be on top of what's coming in. And like TJ said, is that first in, last out. You don't want to do first in, first out. So if they're bringing in material and you're using that material, you don't know what you really got. 1 or 2 percentage points difference in that gradation of that stockpile, it's going to throw your densities out. So look at that webinar that Jim and Ryan and Jimmy White did, and they talk about this, and they talk on how you can narrow that gap and prevent that from happening by watching that number 16 and 30 on the material coming into behind your asphalt plant.
Yep. That's all true. You've got to look at your AC, your voids, and your gradation all together. And this is where loading trucks comes into play. This is exactly where we started discovering if you really take your time loading trucks, it eliminates some of that variability. So the variability may not be in the stockpile, but it could be occurring at the plant because you're jackrabbing the plant back and forth, and it hasn't pushed through that cylinder, that drying cylinder, adequately, or simply loading the trucks. Full batcher sizes are another thing. Making sure that your batchers are set up for full batches and they don't run empty. A lot of times guys will adjust the plants inadvertently to have the batcher doors let me try to do this on the screen, stay open too long, right? So that becomes very, very critical. And I was shocked at this, okay? But like I said, I've lived through that in Missouri and Texas and Florida, looking at those, what you guys call lab, compacted densities, or you're looking at your voids on your bench, and they will move, and they'll move like 0.7%. I was like, bam, bam. And it's like I was in a steady run. So everything becomes super critical, steady hand at the wheel, treat it like a barge going through Galveston Bay, not a speedboat. And, know what's in your pile, know your plant's good, control your temps, do these things. This is what guys do that have success. That there's lots of little details to this, but that helps immeasurably. And when you start talking about that and start bringing that together and having that communication, it's like a lot of changes we've done. Look at all the changes we've done in the safety in our industry in the last 20 years. Why? Because we talk about it, we preach about it. We open this thing as a safety talk, being inclusive to other people, how we talk to people, so we start having these conversations. And one thing that I'm off subject, I apologize, Jim, but I would just challenge you guys. What I like to see happen is a meeting when you have success. Mm-hmm. We typically have meetings only when we have problems. Yeah. And it's like, if you get together and say, we really did great here. What did we do? And then you start enumerating an action plan that will take you to consistent success.
Hey, good. So good. Hey, one more thing just came in. Philip wrote, I hadn't thought about this. This is a good thing to remember. Small sublots could be hurrying the lab to where they're not staying true to molding temperatures. Now, we've seen issues where I don't think the gyratory is as sensitive to molding temperatures as maybe the Texas is. But if we're not following the test procedures properly, whatever the test procedure is, that certainly could have an effect. So, you home run there. We got to make sure we're sampling properly. We got to make sure we're testing properly, because if we don't sample and test properly, the results that we have are meaningless, absolutely meaningless. And we may be making adjustments going the wrong way. So thank you so much for making that comment. I really want to do. Guys, we're right at about the top of the hour, and we actually are at the top of the hour. Let's closing comments, 30 seconds each of you guys.
I already made mine. Chuck,
right.
go for it.
Go for it, Chuck.
Well, your culture of it being a craftsmanship is just, I love that. That is really a great statement. Michael Lee, TXAPA, said that if we focus our energy on safety and then follow and focus our quality control plan, you're going to increase your production. You're going to increase your bonus penalties, increase your bonuses and decrease your penalties. If we focus on safety first, quality second, these other two will follow. And I'm a firm believer that Michael Lee is correct in that. And that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing here, is that we're trying to get that culture of craftsmanship the same way that we did safety. I mean, the way that we did safety is we drilled it in every single day, and look what it's done for our industry. We've really made some leaps and bounds and on safety. And I think that we just need to focus in on our craftsmanship for production and placement, and we're there. That's my 30 seconds.
I'll go back and take 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and letting me be part of this program. So thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Hey, just a reminder, you're going to get a link to this webinar. And if you go to texasasphalt.org and you click on the bar that says education, and you go down and you click on the bar that says videos, you'll see last week's video right there for us. So, hey, we are out of time. Thank you so much, everybody, for weighing in today. TJ, always a pleasure. Chuck, always a pleasure. Great information. Glad to have you guys here. I hope you can take some of this stuff and do something with it. I know there's nuggets in here that are valuable. If you have questions at any time, you need some more information, contact me, contact Chuck. I know where I got TJ on speed dial, so if I need to get a hold of him. So anything that we can do to help, that's what we're here for. So in the meantime, thank you for attending. Be safe out there. Wash your hands and do everything you need to do. Let's make this COVID thing go away so we can get back to normal business. And God bless everybody. Bye-bye now.